All right. Welcome to another episode of Unapologetically Authentic. I'm Yvonne Alston, an unapologetically authentic human that really loves people and connection. I'm a leader and a fierce advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And this podcast really aims to host relevant conversations and perspective sharing to really help address challenges within marginalized communities and challenging life experiences overall. And I really do believe that by sharing our collective humanity and aim to encourage and inspire others to do so, that we can really help to close gaps in understanding and relationships. So, with that, I am super excited today to introduce Gary Perrelli. He is the owner and publisher of Glastonbury and West Hartford lifestyle magazines right here in Connecticut. These are community-based monthly magazines that reach, oh my goodness, about 120,000 readers throughout the greater Hartford area. And each publication really takes a deep dive and look into the community, its people, its places, local businesses, and what's going on in those particular geographies. Prior to this, Gary held positions in the media industry like Disney and ESPN, Fox Communications, AT&T, just to name a few. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with Gary about how he moved from working for large organizations into entrepreneurship and what that meant for him and what he's been able to achieve since. So welcome, Gary.
Thanks, Yvonne. I really appreciate it, and thanks for that wonderful introduction. It makes me sound so old when I hear the background, but we've still got a few good years left, I think.
Absolutely. It just means that you are well seasoned and well positioned for what you have achieved, right? In my mind, that's what it really says. So I'm glad to be having this conversation. So, with that, let's get right into it. When you made the leap to entrepreneurship, what was your greatest concern or fear?
Yeah, so as you said in the brief intro, I held positions in some very large, big brand corporations, right? And the nice thing about being in a big company was the security. You always
Mm,
knew you were getting that paycheck every couple of weeks. That paycheck would arrive. And you had the ability to take advantage of all the resources they provided, training and travel and meeting new people and meeting new businesses. So I always enjoyed that part of corporate America. And it was a great experience for me, and obviously I worked for some really big brands along the way. I mean, you mentioned ESPN, Disney, Cox Communications, and so forth.
yeah,
And they always provided that stability for me and the ability to grow and learn. When I made the decision to branch out on my own, it was a little scary, right? You don't have that safety net anymore. Everything you do was dependent on you and
yeah,
building this from scratch. I mean, we did not have lifestyle magazines in the Hartford area before I started. When I started to look around, I always wanted to take advantage of my background in media, advertising, and sales, but I couldn't find the right opportunity. And I started to look into lifestyle, and I love the product. And I talked to a lot of people that also did what I do now in other markets, and they had
yeah.
nothing but great things to say about the company. So I took the plunge and said, okay, it's time. I wanted to build something for myself instead of building brands for other companies and handing them off and not having anything to put your name on at the end of the day. Yeah, you were part of the process, but it wasn't yours. And
Right.
you didn't own anything afterwards. But this gave me the ability to build this from scratch, to put my brand, my stamp on it, do it my way, even though it's a franchise, you know, and I have some boundaries. And
Sure.
I've gotten my hand slapped a couple of times when I step outside of those boundaries.
Hey,
Um,
positive disruption is never a bad thing.
that's right. But so it, you know, it definitely gave me the ability to put my stamp on it and put my brand on it and build something from scratch, which is something I've always wanted to do.
And that's so meaningful. And I appreciate that so much for myself as an entrepreneur, right? I spent many years in corporate, much like you, and building things for others, having levels of success, but really wanting something that, for me at least, tethered to my passion and what I felt innately purpose to do. And I think that all entrepreneurs have that somewhere within themselves, that there's something meaningful that they want to do, that they want to take the combination of both their professional and lived experience and pull all that together and really hone that and offer something back to the world that is unique, that is novel to them, and that really creates a almost a legacy, right? For my own namesake, an indelible impression in the earth
Yeah.
that is just uniquely yours. And that's what I hear you saying, is that the experiences working for these other big global brands was fantastic. It provided great training ground. It provided great security in many ways. But there was this little entrepreneurial bug within inside you that was, it needed to come out. It needed the opportunity to flourish, to see what you were really capable of on your own. And so you did it, right? And I did it. And I think that's so cool. Um, and I love that you're being really honest about the risk factors that come with that, that are not easy to decide on, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. I mean, these, you know, these magazines are a great community opportunity, right? Because it does highlight
Mm,
businesses and people in the community. So it's a great way to give back. To your point, you know, I live in Glastonbury. Our first magazine was launched in Glastonbury, and that was important to me. I mean, we weren't raised here, my wife and I, but we moved here 27 years ago. We raised our
wow.
family here. The Glastonbury community became, you know, part of who we are and part of our
Yeah.
children's lives and so forth. So it was a great way for me to give back to that community in establishing something that, like I said, that was never done before. So there was that passion of mine. To your
Mm,
point, you know, it wasn't just something like when I started looking at franchises. You know, I looked at all kinds: fast food, dry cleaners, oil. You know, I didn't have a passion for any of that stuff, right? And if it was something that I really was going to pour my heart and soul into, I wanted it to be something that I felt really good about, very passionate about, and I wanted to dive into it and do the work to get it
mm.
to get it launched. And that's where I think there was a nice fit in the lifestyle brand, and my background just happened to be the perfect storm.
Yeah. Well, speaking of an imperfect storm, based on our past conversations and as I've gotten to know you, your business launched both, I believe, or at least Glastonbury at the height of the pandemic. You were just starting out and you were really hit hard by that in your operations, your sales, and financially. I remember from one of our conversations, the discussion you and I had around the clients and the ad sales and how that was all impacted and what you did. To really support the businesses that were trying to get ad space in the magazine. I think our listeners and our watchers of these vodcasts really will be amazed by that as much as I was. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Sure, sure. And I'm smiling now. I wasn't smiling back then.
I bet.
So as you said, we launched our first magazine in May of 2020. That was the Glastonbury magazine. But prior to that, there was a lot of work that needs to be done when you're working with these local magazines and these franchises. The model is you have to raise a certain amount of money in order to get the green light. Once you cover your publication cost, you get the green light, you get a launch date, and you're off to the races. So what I did is I left corporate America in November of 2019. I decided to buy the franchise in Glastonbury in December of 2019. I put my money down. I went to training. I came back in January, ready to hit the ground running. This was January of 2020. I hit the ground running. We hit our goal by February 15th. So within 45 days, we had raised enough money through advertising dollars, because we're a free publication. We get all of our support through our business partners and our advertisers. We raised enough money to get published. We got the green light. They said, okay, your date is May of 2020. Fantastic. You know, we're so excited. We're celebrating, and we're starting to work on the content of the magazine. Well, you know what happened in March, right? I mean, they shut the world down, right? COVID hit. Most of our businesses are small local businesses. And those were the ones that were hit hardest by COVID. So here I am sitting in a situation where, you know, I have agreements in place with hair salons and local gyms, lots of restaurants. Those were the businesses that were hit hardest by this pandemic. They were literally shut down. They didn't know when they were going to be able to open again. They didn't have a choice. So now they've already entrusted me to say, yeah, I want to advertise with you. But all of a sudden now, in between all this, their business is shut down. So the phone starts ringing, right? The emails start popping, and people are saying, hey, I was just shut down. I don't want to advertise. If I can't open my business, there's really no reason for me to advertise.
Yeah, and there's no revenue coming in.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was complete chaos at that point. It was, you know, we went from the highest high to the lowest low, right? And what I did was, you know, I obviously talked to a lot of people along the way, including our franchises and other publishers like myself. And what we decided is, you know, this is obviously something that we've never seen before, we've never experienced before. We have to take action, and we have to figure out a way to support our clients, but also keep our business going. So what I did is I said, anybody that called me and asked, hey, I need to cancel, I said, look, let's just take a pause. Let's hit the pause button. I'm not going to, if you're shut down and you're not open for business, I am not going to run your ad, and I'm not going to bill you. Let's figure this out. At the time, we thought this was going to be a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, right.
It extended a lot further than that. But so that was the first move I made, is anybody who was literally shut down, we said, look, let's just pause and let's keep in touch. And once things start to open up again, we'll start your ad again, and we'll take the agreement from there forward. They were like, you'll do that for me? That's you know, I've called other businesses and told them the same thing, and they said, no, you have a contract, you have to buy our supplies, or you have to take delivery.
Right.
They were shocked. So that was kind of the first phase. The second phase was some people were still open for takeout, or they were curbside delivery. So they said, well, or I said to them, look, if you're still open, you still want to communicate with your audience. So why don't we do a half price? So instead of paying full price, since you're not open fully, let's do a half price. They were like, oh my God, you'll do that for me? Absolutely. Sign me up. Long story short, we probably had, I think at the time, probably 60 clients. I probably spoke to 30 of them throughout this period from February 15th to May 1st. We were able to keep 99.9% of our clients on there, and some of them are still clients today. We lost one client, and the only reason why we lost him is he was a high-end French restaurant, and he was an older gentleman. This was like his third or fourth restaurant that he's had throughout his career, and he said to me, Gary, I'm a high-end French restaurant. My food doesn't translate well to takeout, so I'm not going to start a takeout service. He says,
That makes sense.
I don't have a patio, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to build one just so I can open my business, because it's going to take me months to get it up and running. He said, I'm done. I'm shutting the doors. I'm closing the restaurant. And obviously that was understandable. He was the
Right.
only one we lost. Everyone else stayed with us, either on the half price side or the pause side. And like I said, once we got through this and we were
Yep.
back open for business, they all came back on, and it ended up, like I said, I'm smiling now. I wasn't smiling back then, but it ended up to be a success story, because the bond we formed with our clients during this time, because we did something that was above and beyond their expectations. They thought it was going to be a battle, that they were going to have to pay the bill no matter what. And we just flexed a little bit to show them that we heard them, we felt it, we felt the pain as well, and that we
Yeah.
were willing to bend a little. And they appreciated that. And like I said, it turned out okay, and I'm happy. But it was absolutely crazy during that time.
Yeah, I bet it was. I mean, I know there wasn't an area of life or business that was not significantly impacted by the pandemic, and we're still feeling and witnessing the ripple effects of that. The one thing that when you and I talked previously about this and hearing your recitation of it today again, there's a term that keeps coming to my mind and my heart, and that's grace. Like you literally showed grace to your clients in a way that was so meaningful to them and was so intentional from you towards them. I'm just curious, what made you feel compelled to do that? Um, because business is business, right? And you had just started off. And so here you are kind of sucking wind immediately out of the gate. And, you could have just doubled down and said, I'm really sorry. The contract is the contract. And, I feel for you, but we've got it on, inked. And, I got to survive too. And so forth. But you chose grace instead. So why?
I mean, I just put myself in their position. I said, what would I want to come out of this? And
Mm,
I try to put myself in their shoes and say, look, if this was me on the other end of the line calling, I would expect some sort of compassion. We're all going through this together. And that's where I try to really kind of embody that. And I knew that, we build our business on long-term relationships.
yeah,
And this is
absolutely.
the start of a relationship. And it's usually those first impressions. I'm sure you feel the same way. When I meet somebody for the first time, I kind of know, is this somebody that I want to, be associated with? Is this somebody that I want to work with going forward? And I felt like that was my opportunity to make that first impression. What kind of a business partner am I going to be, based on the fact that we haven't even built a business yet? We haven't built a
Yeah,
partnership, but we were faced with this huge challenge. And that's kind of how that was always in the back of my
mm,
mind, driving my decisions along the way, is I have to understand what they're going through and how I can make that a little bit easier for them, and try to keep them on as a customer for the next year, maybe 2 years, maybe for life. So
yeah.
that was always the driving force.
And what I also hear you saying is you talked about the compassion and putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And that is a key foundational principle of empathy, right? That's what it's really about, that I don't have to experience this thing for myself in order to hear and listen and understand someone else's plight, someone else's experience, and to give them grace and extend compassion in a meaningful way. And it just goes to show that your priorities as an individual, as a franchisee and magazine owner, was the relationship and the bond that you could create with them was much more important than the dollar. And I think in this, where we're at in the world, and how much we talk about as a society about capitalism and all of that, I think it's just so refreshing to hear a business owner say, I prioritize the people over the profits. And I'm always trying to encourage organizations to do that. But you did it in a really unique way. So it wasn't like most organizations that my firm serves, it's when we talk about people over profits, we're talking about the employee experience. We're talking about those that are doing the work for the organization. But you apply that same thinking, that same methodology, if you will, to the people who were your clients, to people who, right, were really in many respects part of your bread and butter, part of your own financial stability and financial health at that time. And to me, you put them before yourself. And that's what has resonated so much for me with you is your willingness to do that in a really selfless way. And so that's part of the reason why I thought it was so important to have this conversation, because I think we don't talk enough about people who are doing this in different pockets of society and in different veins of business and so forth. I think when it comes to philanthropy and in that way, we talk a lot about that, but we don't talk about the different ways that even small business owners like yourself or like my firm and so many others are really supporting and uplifting community ahead of themselves, ahead of the business and the profitability, and how we end up as a result really reaping the benefits of that in terms of relationship building and ongoing business as a result of prioritizing those relationships first.
Yeah, it's easy, and this is where something I took from my corporate America days is it's always easy to make decisions based on money, right? It's clear. It's
Mhm.
really easy. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah,
make more. I'm going to make more money if I do this
yes.
versus if I do this. It's hard to take a step back from that, and I always try to do that when I'm wrestling with a very difficult decision. I always try to take a step back and say, okay, if it wasn't about money, what would you do? And it clarifies the most challenging, difficult
Yeah.
decisions you have to make. If you just clear your head, take a step back and say, okay, if this wasn't all about money, where would I go, or what would I decide? And it just makes your decision making process much more clearer and easier along the way. So I always try to use that as a tool when I'm faced with something like this.
And that just also speaks to your moral compass and where that lies. And I will say for myself, how that same principle has applied to Indelible is from its inception. Um, One of our values was that we were not going to take on clients that would be performative, that that were just looking to tick a box and say, "Oh, we did a DEI workshop," or "We're bringing in the firm so that we look good," or perhaps we're facing a lawsuit or a brand black eye, so we're bringing this in to say, "Look at us and look at what we're doing." And early on, I understood the implications of that financially, that I would be essentially turning down business. And I remember talking to some folks about it, and some people were like, "You're nuts. You need to capitalize on that right now," and all of this. And people were feeling like DEI is hot and
Yeah.
all of that. It's a leading industry right now, et cetera. And I remember thinking to myself, but if I compromise my values, if I compromise what's important and why Indelible Impressions was created in the first place and what we intended to do, if I just go after the money, this will fall apart.
Mhm.
As long as I'm looking at the dollar amount, this goes away. And so for me, and as additionally a woman of faith, right? And feeling very connected vertically in my decision making as well. I was very clear that straying away from the mission and the values that were inherent to us would, if not end in catastrophe, I do not believe to this day that we would have the success that we have. And so it's really meaningful to me when I talk to other business owners that are like, really thinking through their decision-making process and focusing more on the moral imperatives and the mission and the value and what you really aim to do with your product or your service, rather than just capitalism and chasing the dollar and cornering the market and all of that.
Right. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree
Yeah.
more.
So I want to talk a little bit about how we met, because I think it's really important because it also once again speaks to your content of character, and it's a nice blend of, again, your morals and your values and all of that. So we met at the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce. I was giving a talk for what was supposed to be Black History Month, but because of weather, lovely weather here in New England, especially in Connecticut, we got snowed out. So it ended up being pushed to the first week of March. But nevertheless, you attended the session. It was really focused on understanding the legacy of Black Americans in this country, going back all the way from slavery to today, and the implications and how systemic racism was kind of born, right? And how that was impacting communities of color, in particular Black communities, historically, whether that is when it comes to the racial wealth gap, when it comes to incarcerations, when it comes to health disparities, all of that. And it was very data driven, the conversation that I had, and lots of charts and, really eye opening, and what I had hoped would be heart opening as well to the folks who attended it. And at the end of the talk, instead of having typical networking and people schmoozing, I wanted to further challenge the audience by dropping these cards on everybody's table saying, hey, how could you use your privilege and power in ways that can help to address whatever the issues were on the cards? Or if you're doing that already, how can you level it up? And so, talk to me a little bit about that call to action that I gave and what was impactful for you with that. Um, yeah. We'll
Yeah.
start there, and then I have some subsequent questions, but
Sure, sure. So I can't believe it's been like almost 6 months
I
since
know.
that took place. But yeah, I attended to learn and grow and continue to evolve my thinking around this topic. And I was very pleased with the way you presented. It wasn't pointing fingers at anyone in particular. It was sharing data that was very clear and very easy to understand that there is a problem here. And if we don't band together and do something about it, it's going to continue. And that was pretty powerful to me. It resonated with me because I've always felt that just who I am, and I've always felt I've been very open to diversity and try to be inclusive. But anytime I attend any of these conferences or topics, I always learn something new. I started to think, boy, this it is something we have to deal with. And I think there were maybe 30, 40 people in the room. Yeah, what I didn't want to happen was, we kind of sit, we listen, we talk a little bit, and then we all go back to our lives and life goes on and nothing gets done. So I really started to think about, what can I do? I have this platform. It's called a magazine, but as you said at the beginning of the call, We reach 120,000 readers every month in what is considered these more affluent communities, Glastonbury and West Hartford, but they are diverse communities as well. And I said, what can I do to help spread this message? And one of the things we do is we theme our magazines. Every month we have a different theme, and we do that on purpose because we like to keep it interesting. And, we always pride ourselves in, our goal is always to have something in the magazine that teaches someone something they didn't know before they picked up the magazine. And we always try, whether you've lived in Glastonbury or West Hartford for 40 years, we try to find that little nugget. And so we're always looking for great content that we can include in this. So we had a women's issue coming up in May, and it's all about finding inspirational women in the community that are doing amazing work, that are changing lives, changing the way people look at the world around them. And we very selectively go through a list, and we narrow it down to a couple of women that we want to feature in that issue. We do a men's issue in June as well for Father's Day, women's issue in May for Mother's Day. And when I heard you speaking, I said, this is someone I want to feature in the magazine. You've got an amazing message. And I felt like we could definitely accomplish our goal of educating our readers, teaching them something new, or at least expanding their horizons. So we sat down and talked about doing a feature article, which we ended up doing in that issue. We also were very fortunate that we had the perfect shot, and we got you on the front cover there as well. But yeah, it was all about finding that message and using my platform to get the word out to the community.
And that was so meaningful to me, because it I think at the end, if I remember correctly, I asked people to kind of go around the room and, say and talk about their commitments and so forth. And I remember you specifically denoting that you were going to use your, yes, your privilege and your power, but also my platform. And that really just hit me. And I didn't know exactly what that meant until we talked about it afterwards. And, we talked about having an article in the magazine. And at that time, I definitely wasn't thinking, oh, I'll be on the cover or anything like that. So that was such a beautiful opportunity for Indelible and for us to get, collectively work together to get the word out about the work, why the work is necessary, what we're doing, how we're doing it, in hopes that that impacts people, as you mentioned, that are part of some of the wealthier cities and towns here in Connecticut and in the greater Hartford region, to go, I never thought about things this way. I never thought perhaps that West Hartford Lifestyle magazine would be talking about a topic like this. And so I thought it was incredible. And I will tell you that, people make verbal commitments all the time about things they're going to do and so forth, and well-meaning, but you did it. Like, it was a matter of, like, I think 48 hours or something like that, and I already had an email talking about when we can do this. And I just want to tell you that that was so meaningful, and I was so glad that it inspired action and commitment. And I was also thinking about your readership, right? And kind of how they reacted to that, to the article, and seeing this Black woman on the cover with a shaved side of her head, and being very unapologetically authentic about the passion and the purpose around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. What was that like for you? I think with your own team, as far as going through and saying, hey, we're going to do this, but then also from your readership, was it embraced? Did you get a little backlash? Did you get a little cold shoulder from that?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. The feedback has been nothing but positive. I can't tell you
Oh,
how many people have come to me and said, "Good for you. getting that message out. Hey, I didn't know that, or hey, I read that article and I'm thinking maybe we can try this and maybe we can try that. So the feedback has been extremely positive. I think
Good.
you have a very, we always pride ourselves in the magazine, and even during COVID times, we always pride ourselves on good news, positive stories.
Mm.
This is a lifestyle magazine. We're not a news organization. We're not trying to break news. We're not trying to cover, this any. We don't do politics. We
You
keep
don't do scandal, you don't do any of that,
we
right?
stay away from all that. It's good news,
Yes.
positive stories. And I saw this message as an extremely positive story, and that's why I decided to move forward with it. Because I think it is. If your message, the way the article was written, it's all about educating, expanding people's horizons, and spreading the word. And I thought that our platform would do that nicely, in that in the way we positioned it in the magazine. So yeah, no, everything has been wonderful, great
Good.
feedback, and very positive.
Yeah. And I shared with you right before we did the recording the tremendous impact that it's had for me as a business owner, and as a DEIB practitioner, that people have stopped because it goes everywhere. And I think I didn't even know the vast distribution that the magazine has. And so I had no clue, but it's been really cool for me to have people stop me and be like, "Hey, I think I've seen you somewhere." Or for some of our clients here in Connecticut and in the greater Hartford region, some of the employees to say, "I saw you. I was at my doctor's office, or I was at my salon, or I was, at this restaurant and saw you on the cover of a magazine," and that was really cool. And then for them to read the article and get a sense of confirmation of myself, my character, indelible, the team, and why we approach this very delicate and critical topic the way that we do. So, as we're wrapping up, I'm curious from your perspective, what has the information that was shared between the conversation with the Chamber of Commerce and then reading through what was written in the magazine and the conversations that we've had since? Um, how has that changed or expanded your thinking or feeling or behaviors as it relates to being inclusive and driving equity through our systems and exchanges, and why diversity is important?
Yeah, so it's had an indelible impression on me. Um,
Yay! You hear that? Namesake,
there you go.
yay!
Yeah, I mean, we're now constantly thinking as we publish every issue of this magazine, are we representing our community? Are we showcasing topics that reflect our community as a whole? And prior to meeting you and sitting through your presentation and talking with you afterwards, and the interview and the article, we weren't having those conversations with my editor, my writers, my photographers. It was,
Wow.
we were going through the motions. Hey, we got to get a magazine out. This is the topic. Let's make sure we get plenty of content around that topic, and let's go. Now we're taking a step back every month and we're saying, hey, does this magazine reflect our community? Does it show, are we inclusive? Is it showing the diversity of the community that we serve? And we challenge ourselves at times, and we do
Right.
change things along the way. At the 11th
Yeah.
hour, when we're rushing to get something done, we don't feel
Yeah.
it's just right, that we need to make a tweak here or a tweak there. So I hope that's showing for the readers out there. If you do get our magazine at home, I hope it's showing in the way we publish the magazine now going forward, that we are trying to include more diversity, more inclusion, uh, uh, in the content that we provide. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so cool. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, all the things, all the emotions in this moment, because that is at its core, the indelible impression that I myself and the team aim to make, right? Are people thinking and feeling and behaving differently as a result in a positive way? And in work and in business, absolutely. And also in personal, right? One of the things that we often say to our clients is you might be learning all of this in the workplace and in that environment, but this should go with you everywhere your foot shall tread. So take these learning, take this understanding and this reflection into your homes, into your neighborhoods, into your community, so that we can move forward together as a society towards greater understanding and respect for why diversity is important and the richness that brings to our individual and collective lives, why we need to have an equity lens and focus on all the different areas of life so that every person, no matter how they identify, gets the opportunity to be successful in ways that are meaningful for them and that they're getting what they need from workplaces or supports in different ways so that they have access, right, in different areas of life and different ways that they deserve and need access that are available to others, but may not be available to them. And certainly from the inclusion piece of feeling included, being part of the conversation, not as an afterthought, but as a forethought, as a present participant in conversations that have impact and ripple effects across organizations, lives, and society. And that collectively we feel this sense of belonging, right? Because we say that when diversity, equity, and inclusion work together synergistically and successfully, belonging is an outcome, right? And
Mhm.
everybody wants to feel that they belong, no matter what walk of life they hail from. We're hardwired for connection, and that connection is important to us. And we need to bridge more strongly to one another. And I think that what you've displayed in content of character, in content of your magazine, definitely does that. And I'm just honored to know you. I'm grateful for the relationship and the friendship that we've been able to develop. I know that I'm constantly learning from you in different facets. And I just, you know, thank you for that, because it's been illuminating and enjoyable.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. Thank you for letting us tell your story to our readership. We really appreciate that. And I think we'll continue to work together to find
Yeah.
other ways that we can continue to spread the word and get the message out.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, if there was one last thing that you could say to folks based upon the experiences that you've had and how it relates to broadening and expanding perspectives and thinking and feeling and, behaviors, what would you say?
Yeah, I think my biggest advice is that we can all make a difference. I happen to be lucky enough to have two magazines in the Hartford area that I could use as my platform, but that doesn't mean that others are limited. Just by living your life differently, by spreading the word, educating others, I think we can all make a difference. And that's what it's going to take to really make systemic change, is that we all have to be thinking this way and taking action based on what we can control.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one last question for you, Gary. How can folks get in touch with you? How can they get uh, copies of the magazine, etc.?
Sure, sure. So if you don't live in West Hartford or Glastonbury and you don't receive a copy of our magazine, you can go to citylifestyle.com/West Hartford. That's our digital page. You can see all of our magazines on there. You can open up the magazine as if you were holding it in your hand, so you can see all of our articles and all the different
Oh,
features.
the digital issues. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Or you can go to citylifestyle.com/Glastonbury, and there's the Glastonbury page with all the Glastonbury magazines. If you want a copy of our magazine delivered to you at home, whether you live in West Hartford or Glastonbury or not, if you don't live in either one of those towns and you still want a copy, just send me an email at gary.perrelli@citylifestyle.com, and I'll be more
Nice.
than happy to add you to our mailing list.
All right, fantastic. I didn't know that that was an option for expanding distribution. So very cool. Thank you for your time. It has been such an honor to have this conversation with you today. From us at Unapologetically Authentic 365, thank you for taking time to watch this. We hope that we're bringing you great content, great conversations in which to help illuminate our lived in and professional experiences and create meaningful change through community. So I look forward to my next conversation. It's going to be coming up in a few weeks. Until then, be well. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.